This is an Amano shrimp, and she is pregnant. In a few weeks' time, she is going to lay anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 eggs in this freshwater tank. After the eggs hatch, the larvae will require brackish water in order to survive and continue their life cycle. This red relish shrimp, or Canadian shrimp as I've termed it, is feasting on some dead vegetation and biofilm. What is biofilm, you may ask? Well, biofilm is a collection of various bacteria, algae, and fungi which shrimp love to eat. These tiny microorganisms grow and anchor themselves on every surface in a healthy and cycled aquarium and are the preferred food for shrimp. This is how I introduce new shrimp to my aquarium. 1. I place my newly purchased shrimp in a bowl or container and I'll keep it in close proximity to the aquarium that they will be going into. 2. I drip acclimate my shrimp with water from my aquarium. I aim for 1 to 2 drops a second for approximately 3 hours, as this will help my shrimp get used to my water parameters. 3. I turn off my aquarium light and transfer the shrimp into my aquarium. By turning off the light, my shrimp will have a calm experience adjusting to their new home, and this cherry shrimp is eating the molt of an Amano shrimp. Now you may be wondering why. When a shrimp starts to molt, it sheds its exoskeleton to grow a new, larger one to live in. Adult shrimp will molt about every 3 to 4 weeks, while shrimplets and juveniles may molt every 1 to 2 weeks due to how fast they grow. The molt contains a lot of calcium and other minerals which are useful, especially for a shrimp that is trying to build a new exoskeleton. And now you know why. My Amano shrimp is eating a red cherry shrimp. Amano shrimp are primarily algae eaters, but are also scavengers and will eat uneaten fish food, decaying plant matter, or dead tank mates. In this case, the opportunity presented itself in the form of a dead red cherry shrimp which could have been caused due to issues with molting, age, or a host of other issues. Amano shrimp and cherry shrimp are generally peaceful and can coexist in the same tank, but Amano shrimp can target and consume smaller cherry shrimp. This behavior is relatively rare and is more likely to occur when there is a scarcity of food sources. By providing adequate hiding places and a diverse diet, you can create a favorable environment that minimizes the chances of aggression and promotes the overall well-being of both shrimp species. And now you know why. 3 tips for keeping Neocaridina shrimp. 1. Use an inert substrate in your aquarium so that your water parameters do not get affected. Neocaridina shrimp prefer harder water that has a neutral to slightly higher pH. 2. If you have lighter or bright colored shrimp, a darker substrate like a black substrate will help make their color pop. If you have dark colored shrimp like blue dreams, then you'll want to go with a light colored substrate. 3. Plants help provide more surface area for biofilm which shrimp love to eat. Plants also act as a space for them to retreat to for cover and shade. The more plants you have in your aquarium, the more you'll see a shrimp out in the open. Stay tuned for part 2. 3 tips for keeping Neocaridina shrimp. 1. Before you add new shrimp to your aquarium, drip acclimate them for at least 3 hours, as this will reduce your stress level and make it easier for them to adapt to their new home. 2. When doing a water change, replace anywhere between 10% to 20% of the water. Any more than that could stress your shrimp, as your water parameters could get affected, especially if you're filling your aquarium directly from your tap. 3. Try using aged water if possible, as storing dechlorinated water in a bucket for 24 hours or more will allow it to closely match the water parameters you have in your aquarium. The only thing you have to keep an eye out for is the temperature. If it's different, drip the water in slowly over a period of time. Stay tuned for part 3. 3 tips for keeping Neocaridina shrimp. 1. Shrimp love to hang off floating plants, as it provides a source of biofilm for them to eat, as well as shade. When removing these plants from your aquarium during your maintenance, give them a shake or scoop them out with a glass jar so that you can check and see if any are still hanging on. If you use a net, there is a chance you could scoop 1 or 2 out and not know. 2. Shrimp are scavengers and will eat just about anything, but providing them with high-quality shrimp food will give them the nutrients they require to molt successfully. 3. Shrimp molt every few weeks, which is where they shed their exoskeleton in order to grow a new one. If you come across their molt in your aquarium for the first time, you may be surprised, but fear not, your shrimp is not dead. You do not need to remove the molt, as your shrimp will eat it as it contains a source of calcium. Cherry shrimp and Amano shrimp are relatively easy to feed. The first thing to note is that they are algae eaters, and each will eat some form of algae. They are also omnivores and scavengers and will eat anything from dead plant matter and tank mates to leftover food and biofilm. Although they can live off whatever is in your tank, a high-quality diet is required as well to help them thrive. This can include shrimp-only food, algae wafers, to various blanched vegetables like zucchini, lettuce, spinach, and carrots. This red relish shrimp is carrying her fertilized eggs on the underside of her body. A shrimp carrying eggs is also known as a buried shrimp. These eggs will stay there until they are ready to hatch, but until then, she will fan them with her tail on a frequent basis. Why does she do this? Fanning helps provide the eggs with oxygen. It also keeps them clean and ensures that mold and bacteria don't grow on them. A Skittle tank allows you to experience the interaction of various colorful shrimp together. This tank can be created from culls of your other shrimp tanks, or you can purchase a random mix of colors. Either way, every shrimp keeper should keep a Skittle tank. Shrimp eat all the time. Their digestive system is pretty short and simple. It does not allow the shrimp to store any food, therefore they have to eat constantly. Now you know why. If you're new to shrimp keeping, you may find that Neocaridina shrimp are a little easier to work with as they tend to be hardy and more adaptable. Red cherry shrimp, blue dream shrimp, and yellow laser shrimp are some that fall under the Neocaridina species. Caridina shrimp tend to be more sensitive and generally prefer soft, slightly acidic water. Crystal red shrimp, blue bowl shrimp, and black Taiwan crystal bee shrimp are some that fall under the Caridina species. With both species of shrimp, as long as high water quality is maintained along with the right parameters, they will thrive. You've got to try this. Plant some duckweed and throw it into your tank. Your shrimp will love you for doing this. That pesky duckweed you hated so much will now be an additional source of food. Did you know that new tank syndrome can kill your shrimp? Shrimp are sensitive to water parameter changes and can easily go into shock or die if there's a pH imbalance, drastic difference in water temperature, or traces of ammonia or nitrite. That is why it's important that when you set up a new tank, you let it go through the complete nitrogen cycle and establish some sort of balance before introducing any shrimp. This can take a few weeks, so patience is key. While your tank finds its balance, it's important to test your water on a daily basis to check for high levels of ammonia or nitrite and perform water changes accordingly. You can use test strips or the API Freshwater Master Test Kit to test your water. Did you know that improper acclimation can kill your shrimp? Improperly acclimating your shrimp before adding them to your tank is a sure way to kill them. Adult shrimp are more easily affected than juveniles. Your new shrimp are coming from completely different water parameters, and so you need to give them time to get used to your water parameters. To properly acclimate your shrimp, I suggest a slow drip acclimation process for at least 3 hours, which will guarantee you a high survival rate. Check out the pinned comment on how I acclimate new shrimp. Did you know that overfeeding your tank can kill your shrimp? Overfeeding your tank can lead to water pollution and can cause spikes in ammonia and nitrite levels, which will result in death for your shrimp. Shrimp are sensitive creatures and require stable water conditions. If you place food in your tank and none of your shrimp come to eat the food, you are overfeeding your tank. Other than the food you are providing, there's also biofilm, algae, dead plant matter, and other food sources available in your tank. If you have Caridina shrimp, the active substrate also acts as a food source. Depending on the size of your tank, look at feeding your shrimp every other day or even just once or twice a week. Feeding them a small quantity twice a day is better than throwing in a whole batch, as it can easily pollute the tank and put a strain on your filter. Underfeeding your shrimp is also a lot better than overfeeding them. Remember, if you spot any uneaten food after a period of time, it's best to remove it from your tank. Did you know that improper water changes can kill your shrimp? Changing too much of your tank water at once and also filling your tank directly from your tap can kill your shrimp. Shrimp are sensitive to changes in water parameters, and by changing too much of the water at once can result in a pH imbalance and fluctuation in temperature. These changes can shock your shrimp. It's best to have a separate bucket of aged water, as the parameters will closely resemble what you have in your tank. To create this, simply fill a bucket with dechlorinated water and allow it to sit for 24 to 48 hours. This will allow all the parameters to stabilize, and when you go to fill your tank, use the water from this bucket. When changing your water, replace anywhere from 10% to 20% of the water depending on your tank size. If it's a community tank, this can be done on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. If it's a shrimp-only tank, this can be done on a bi-weekly or monthly basis. Shrimp love stable parameters, and so doing less is more beneficial for them. Did you know that old tank syndrome can kill your shrimp? At a certain point, your tank may not be able to handle the amount of inhabitants in it due to the high numbers. This is more noticeable if you're a breeder. Your filter may not be able to cope with the amount of waste and won't be able to keep up. This will lead to a bacteria buildup, a rise in ammonia, nitrites, and nitrates. At this point, you can experience massive death syndrome, which can result in most of your shrimp population dying off. To work around this issue, ensure you keep up with your tank maintenance, gravel vac when you can, while avoiding baby shrimp, and also avoid overfeeding. If you rely on sponge filters, you may want to look at getting a hang on the back filter if your tank is large enough to support it. Did you know that molting issues can kill your shrimp? Shrimp are detritivores and opportunistic feeders. This means they feed on algae, detritus, biofilm, leftover fish food, dead plants, and tank mates. Not all of these may be available in every tank depending on how they're set up, and having them solely rely on scavenging will not benefit them, as they may not get the minerals they require to molt properly. Now, also keeping shrimp in the wrong water parameters can lead to them having molting issues. For example, keeping a Neocaridina shrimp in soft water will not benefit at all, as it requires the minerals from harder water. The same goes with keeping Caridina shrimp in hard water when they require soft water. If a shrimp experiences an issue molting, it'll ultimately lead to their death, as they won't be able to shed their exoskeleton. Unfavorable water conditions and mineral deficiency are usually the leading causes. To resolve this issue, keep your shrimp within the water parameters they require and provide them with food occasionally that will benefit them. This can include shrimp-only food, blanched vegetables, or frozen food. Just like you feed your fish, feed your shrimp and they will thrive in your tank. Did you know that Planaria can kill your shrimp? Planaria are flatworms that are primarily seen in shrimp-only tanks. They can easily overrun a tank when overfeeding is involved and there is excess food buildup or you do not have a regular cleaning routine. These flatworms leave a slime trail similar to that of snails. If a shrimp steps on it, they will get stunned. The planarian will then look for a soft spot to enter the shrimp's body and proceed to eat it alive. To prevent planaria from building up in your tank, ensure you have a regular cleaning routine. If it is a shrimp-only tank, you can use products like No Planaria to kill these flatworms, but ensure you remove any snails you wish to keep. After a few water changes, you can place your snails back into your tank. If it is not a shrimp-only tank, you can look at getting fish that'll eat planaria. Fish like rosy loaches, rasboras, and guppies, to name a few, will take care of the problem. Did you know that copper can kill your shrimp? Copper is a shrimp killer, but shrimp also require it to some degree. So how can it be beneficial and a killer at the same time? If you look at various shrimp and fish food, as well as some of the liquid fertilizers for your tank, you will see that they contain trace amounts of copper. This is not harmful to your shrimp, as the amount of copper present in them is very low. Shrimp require trace amounts of copper as it's an essential part of their blood. Now, on the other hand, if you have sick fish and are planning to treat them with certain medications, these medications can have a lot of copper in them, and dosing your tank with that much copper will surely kill your shrimp. To avoid killing your shrimp, always separate the sick fish and put them in a medical tank where you can treat them accordingly. Once they're healthy again, place them back in the original tank. One thing to note is that if you do introduce copper into your tank, cleaning it completely will not get rid of the copper, as it tends to get absorbed by the silicone to some degree. Over time, the silicone will release copper into your water column, and if you have shrimp in your tank, they could die off. You also have to be careful when buying a used tank, as you may not know if the previous owner introduced any copper into it. It's always best to ask before you buy.